World Junior Hockey Championships, Day 2, live in Ottawa at the FanFest, just outside of the TD. Welcome to the Sheet once again for this Friday, December the 27th. Coming up on the program a little bit later on, Craig Campbell, who has, for me, one of the coolest jobs in the world. He's a manager at the Hockey Hall of Fame Resource Center. It's a nice Hockey Hall of Fame display here at FanFest. Essentially, it's his job to scan the globe and come back with hockey memorabilia and paraphernalia. And you will never believe the lengths he travels to get these pieces that you see at displays here in Ottawa and at Yonge and Front Street at the Hockey Hall of Fame. It is Day 2. Scott Wheeler is here from The Athletic. Thanks so much for stopping by today.
Thanks for
I know
having
this
me.
is like Christmas morning for you. Like every 5 minutes, there's a new game starting. So I'm very thankful that you parked a little bit of time here for me today. Before we get to what we saw on Day 1 and what we're seeing on Day 2, are you much of a hockey memorabilia guy?
Are
you a collector?
No, never really was, honestly. I got the kids. I got a little one at home. He's almost 4 now, and he's getting into hockey cards, and he's a big hockey nut already.
Left-hand shot or right-hand shot? Obligatory
right-hand
question.
shot. We're both righties.
Oh, add 10% to the contract.
I
Wheels.
know. I got a family of lefties, so I'm already on an island that way. My old man's got some nice pieces though that I'm hoping he'll leave me in the will. The big one is he stumbled at an antique store across a photo album of McLean's magazine shots of the 1967-1968 Leafs at training camp in Peterborough. McLean's was meant to do a big magazine feature sort of inside the locker room, and it actually got chopped sort of on the cutting room floor, if you will.
Okay.
So he's got 150 photos from in the locker room, guys in their jock straps, smoking cigarettes, sort of right after they've won their last Stanley Cup. I think he had it appraised at some point. It's worth some ungodly amount of money. But he sent me a couple of – he took a couple out of this album that he's got. Right. And it's sort of an Antiques Roadshow kind of thing. And I've got them framed in my office at home. That's really probably the only cherished memorabilia I have.
Sure.
There's some pieces. I mean, we get media gifts and all that at these tournaments over the years, but never been a big collector. I was a fan in Nashville of the bottle of Jack Daniels.
Whiskey. Yeah, the whiskey they gave us.
Nice NHL draft logo on it. That was nice. But
they could have used that because the Rangers selected in the first round one before Nashville. Nashville wanted Gabe Perreault. The Rangers took him. Listen, the consolation prize is Tanner Mollendijk, which is a really nice consolation prize. But that was an interesting draft. But I'll tell you, I want you to meet Craig. Because it's stories like this where Craig's ears perk up and he says, "Ooh, you have what?" And then the conversations can begin because at events like this, people will come up to Craig, for example, or anyone from the Hall of Fame and say, "I've got this. How do I get it into the Hockey Hall of Fame?" You'd be surprised, all of our listeners and viewers, how many pieces in the Hall of Fame just come from, as Brian Burke would say, regular civilians.
Yeah, civilians.
Just regular folks that just happen to have something in their basement.
Of course, it's that piece of hockey history and the people who put it together, the people who do that work at the Hockey Hall of Fame. It's awesome. It's a pretty special group, and Brian, I'm sure, considers himself one of those people in his own way. So as it relates to the World Junior, one last little memorabilia story. I think you'll like this. Has a Kitchener Rangers tie-in as well. Now there's a cup. When you win the World Juniors, there is a cup. Before they used to award plates. I personally miss the day of plates. Very tennis.
I don't know. It is very tennis. I don't know what it is about hockey specifically. It's very food inspired. It's very table inspired. You're either getting a plate that you eat on or a cup that you drink out of. These are the awards we hand out. Nonetheless, I digress. So 1994, Danny Flynn was one of the coaches of the World Juniors. This would have been Czech Republic then, I believe. That's when they did the round robin, and they didn't have a playoff format. If you were top 3, that was your gold, silver, and bronze.
Yep.
Canada wins gold, and they get the plate. And for years and years, no one could find the plate. And it was either the Hockey Hall of Fame or Hockey Canada that put out the hunt. The Flynn family had it. Danny Flynn had it, but they couldn't find it anywhere in the house. They finally found it under their son's bed. He had been using the plate to eat his grilled cheese sandwiches.
Disgracing an artifact.
Danny Flynn's son is Brad Flynn, who's the assistant coach of the Kitchener Rangers
Yep.
of the OHL, and I hope I didn't get him in hot water by sharing that story about eating grilled cheese sandwiches off the 1994 World Junior Hockey Championship plate. Okay, on the plate yesterday, a couple of games. We focus so much on the show about Canada and the USA.
Yeah.
I don't know that we learned much about either team or were challenged by anything about either team. Look, USA just blew out the Germans.
Yep.
There were some real command performances by a couple of really key players for Team Canada, but focusing on those two games specifically yesterday,
Yep.
What did you take away, if anything?
Well, I think my takeaway from the USA game was, frankly, that they actually didn't look like the team I thought they were going to look like. I thought they really struggled, especially defensively. I thought Colin Ralph, Paul Fisher, Aaron Manetian, some of their depth defensemen, which was the question about this Team USA, very raw group. Colin Ralph's never played at this level, never really played in a major international event for USA Hockey. Aaron Manetian's a returnee, but never really got into action last year. Didn't play well at the Summer Showcase this summer. There were questions about, okay, after Zeev Buium, who's playing? In crunch time against Team Canada on New Year's Eve or in a medal game, who's playing for that blue line?
He'll play 45 minutes.
Yeah, Zeev, the fact that Zeev played 24 against the Germans in and of itself is a storyline, I think. It's telling of the way that, not just the way that they view Zeev, and obviously he plays for David Carl at Denver, but it's also telling of the way that they view that blue line. I would expect that Adam Kleber, who was a healthy scratch, the Sabres second rounder, is going to get into action here tomorrow when USA plays Latvia in their second game. And it's still very much a work in progress, that blue line. The Germans actually pressed them at points in that game. They challenged them. It was a closer game through a period and a half than I think anybody expected it would be. The top line, we knew that Gabe Perreault and Ryan Leonard and James Haggins were going to do damage. My other question with Team USA as we move through the tournament here is, who's the second line? They have Danny Nelson, Trevor Connolly, and Cole Eiserman as air quotes the second line. But you hear David Carl talk about the way that Max Plant and Oliver Moore play, the engine that Oliver Moore plays with, the skating. I think in crunch time again, you'll see that third line, quote unquote, with Brody Zemer, Max Plant, and Oliver Moore. Those guys are going to be relied on more than Cole Eiserman and Trevor Connolly. I think they view Eiserman and Connolly a lot like they viewed Trevor Zegras when he was the 13th forward at this tournament. Arthur Kaliev was the 13th forward at this tournament. I think they view them as sheltered guys, power play types. So those were my takeaways from USA. And Trey Augustine, maybe for the first time in a long time that I've watched Trey Augustine, looked a little flustered, didn't look himself, wasn't at his best. So an early leg up, certainly, to Michael Harabel and Carter George in terms of the top goaltender in the tournament.
Back to the U.S. blue line for a second. With Canada, the built-in excuse, if Canada doesn't win gold, is, well, they didn't bring Michael Misa. Like, do we say the same thing about E.J. Emery with the U.S. defense? Like, if U.S. doesn't repeat, do we look at that blue line and say they overthought this one?
Especially if David Carl gets to a point in this tournament where he still feels like defensemen 4 through 7, he just can't trust them in the third period or in a tight game. I think absolutely. I spoke with a few people on press row, a few scouts at the rink yesterday about that. Just in talking after the Germany game about how they looked sloppy in their own zone. They gave up a lot against the rush against the Germans yesterday. It's not a strong German age group. This isn't Tim Stützle and JJ Peterka and Moritz Seider, right? So I do think that's a major talking point here. Cole Hudson and E.J. Emery also had built-in chemistry. They played for 2 years together at the program. E.J. Emery and that sort of skating and length and his defensive play really does complement Cole Hudson nicely. I think E.J. could have played an important role on this team. So absolutely, I think that in and of itself will be a talking point. If USA comes up short, and this is their opportunity, first time ever to win back-to-back golds, if they fall a little bit short and it falls on that defense and it looking a little porous, I think the absence of Emery will be a talking point.
Thoughts on what we saw from Canada in Game 1 against Finland? It's a 4-0 shutout. If anybody didn't know who Matthew Schaefer was, you certainly know who Matthew Schaefer is by now. What did you take away from Team Canada over Finland yesterday?
I think with Canada, my concern coming into the tournament was, did they bring too many energy guys, too many go-getters, too many checkers? Did they try to build too much of that traditional bottom six that we've seen Hockey Canada build in the past? I wondered whether they needed all of Luca Pinelli, Tanner Howe, who I know they love, Ethan
Yeah.
Gauthier, Matthew Cadafor, Cole Baudouin, players who really play the same role. They play the same style. And through pre-tournament, I thought this team isn't really scoring. When Gavin McKenna and Berkeley Catton and that top line of Callum Ritchie and Easton Cowan aren't on the ice, they're not creating a ton. Yesterday, then I sat down and watched them, and the way that they dictated not just the Swedes, but the Czechs, now the Finns through pre-tournament and into the tournament, the way that they've dictated them defensively, I think sort of started to have me wondering, at the very least, is this team extremely well built, kind of in the Sochi way that it was well built for Mike Babcock at the Sochi Olympics, where are they just going to suffocate and be so good defensively that you maybe don't need to light this tournament up? You don't need that high-powered offense.
It does look like a team that's very comfortable playing a 2-1 game.
Yes.
Or a 1-0 game. That Sochi team was that. And I wondered, to your point about building a team from Mike Babcock, if Hockey Canada here has said, look, Dave Cameron is an old school coach. Dave Cameron is an old school dude. We're giving him an old school team.
There's a little bit of that. And then on the flip side, you've got Chris Lazary, Sylvain Favreau, two of the brightest young coaches in the CHL on his bench. And they're providing maybe a bit of a different voice. So I think that's actually been for this team as they constructed their group. I think that's been a major talking point. They bring in Al Murray and all of the experience that Al Murray has with the Tampa Bay Lightning, and before that with the Los Angeles Kings. And they clearly wanted this team to play different than last year's team. In talking to Hockey Canada brass in advance of this year's tournament, the one theme, and they didn't even hide it, was how disappointed they were in last year's group, in their competitiveness, in their ability to get to the inside. Alan Letang, the head coach of that team in Gothenburg, came out every day with us in the media last year and said, we need to get to the inside more. We need to get to second and third chances at the net more. This team, they made that an emphasis in leaving a returnee like Matthew Wood off the team, and leaving a Beckett Seneca off the team, in not inviting Michael Misa to camp. Andrew Cristal wasn't on this team. I think they really prioritize guys who are going to get to the inside, who are going to scrap, who are going to finish checks, and that's the identity of Ethan Gauthier and Tanner Howe. That's who they are as players. So this team is built much differently than it was a year ago, and now we get to put to the test. And the real test will be Boxing Day or New Year's Eve, and USA, right?
So I'm going to go deep with this one on your wheels. I got here a couple hours ago, just walking around looking at all the displays like I did yesterday. But there was a family of three, mother, father, and son, walking around. They all had Nikitin jerseys on. And they're going to be joining us here in a couple of moments. I'll tell you why in a second. I assume this must be the family from Kazakhstan, and they're here to support their son, Vladimir Nikitin, who's a netminder for Kazakhstan, the only Ottawa Senators prospect in this tournament.
And the only drafted prospect for the Kazakhs as well.
Is that right?
Yeah. So
he has a chance to be a hero, certainly here in Ottawa, and you guys talked about this on your podcast, where they'll probably be cheering for him here in Ottawa.
Yep.
Do you have a thought on this netminder? I mean, we're talking a lot about Trey Augustine, certainly Michael Rabel in Czechia, but do you have a thought on Nikitin here?
Super busy in the net was kind of the talking point of him in advance of his selection in the draft. Then he comes over to the BCHL last year, tries to sort of get acclimatized in North America. The numbers don't necessarily look like the numbers of a kid who gets an entry-level contract, for example. So he may be a player where this is the highest level he ever plays at in terms of his age group, in terms of the stage, in terms of playing in front of a sold-out or close to sold-out crowd at TD Place. I've been really impressed with the crowds at TD Place here. You expect the crowds for Hockey Canada to be big, especially in their return to Ottawa, but just seeing TD Place for non-Canadian games, it's been really positive here, and at a better turnout, frankly, than it was in Buffalo and Toronto and Montreal and Vancouver, in Edmonton. This has been the best start to a tournament for an NHL market that we've seen in a decade. And I hope they get behind him. I hope that he plays his heart out. Really active kid, as I said. Athletic kid. He's a competitive kid. He's going to face 50, 60 shots in multiple games in this tournament, I think. It's going to be a challenge for him. They played a CCHL team in pre-tournament because they weren't comfortable putting their kids right away in pre-tournament action against World Junior opponents. So they've kind of tried to ease that group into this tournament. The players on that Kazakhstan team that got them here, that rose them from Division 1A, into this level. And Stephen Ellis could tell you all about them. Those kids have all aged out. So they had a much stronger 19-year-old age group a year ago than they do now. They're in tough. I expect that he'll give up. Even if he plays great, he'll have some games where he gives up 7, 8, 9, 10 goals. But if he can keep some games close and have a nice World Junior moment here, it would be awesome. It would be one of the stories of the tournament, especially after Yakimchuk didn't make Team Canada. This is
huge disappointment.
He's really the saving grace for Sens fans here.
So that family, by the way, that's this Billet family from the BCHL. He's like they've billeted kids for like last 10 or 15 years, and they just love this guy. They're going to be on the show a little bit later on. That is Chris, Max, and Larissa Weeb. So I'm bringing on Billet families because one of the wonderful things about, I was making this point with Steven yesterday, one of the wonderful things about this tournament is, and I get that even at this level, like a lot of it can be, political and business oriented, etc. But this is like that last sort of glint of almost like some type of hockey innocence, right? There's still an idea that hockey's just like a fun sport played by kids. I always say whenever I do like the speaker circuit, or when I'm asked to speak, I always close with the story of the little boy that goes up to his mom and says, "Mom, when I grow up, I want to be a hockey player." His mom looks down at her son and smiles and said, "Son, that's great, but you can't do both." And it's a tournament like this that always sort of reminds you that you're always a kid when you play hockey. Do you think that's part of the charm of this, or the attraction? Like, this is that last little, before the innocence gets wiped away when a lot of these kids turn pro. Is that part of the draw?
For sure. And even the ability of a Latvia in Edmonton a couple of years ago to stun their way into the quarterfinal. We talk so much and we hear so much every year during the blowout games about shrinking this tournament in size and these narratives of without Russia, there are too many blowouts. I don't think we need that at all. I think that if anything, I'd rather see this tournament expand. I think it's unbelievable for not just the Canadian kids to play on home soil in a tournament like this, or the Swedes last year to win a silver medal in Gothenburg, when the Scandinavium was just electric for them in that gold medal game against USA, and the scrappiness of that finish in that gold medal game against USA. You see kids take bad penalties in this tournament that you'd never see in a Stanley Cup final.
Yeah.
You see leads blown. You see them shrink in the defensive zone. Even Team Canada against teams like, even the Americans yesterday against the Germans. Moments in the game where you could see them really collapsing in front of their net and worried.
Yep.
Just things that you don't see at the NHL level. So it's the best. This is the highlight of my year on the hockey calendar for me. This is better than the NHL draft. It's better than U18 Worlds. I watched William Dufour score 4 goals in St. John. I've seen great moments elsewhere for kids this age, but the World Juniors is the pinnacle. Those Canadian kids have never played in front of the crowd that they played in front of last night. And that was Boxing Day. Forget New Year's Eve or what a gold medal game will look like out in Canada, right? So it's special for them. And even in interviews, they're not jaded. They haven't been through this. Sidney Crosby's answered the same 50 questions for 20 years here. These kids aren't there yet.
Yeah.
For my purposes, it's a joy to tell their stories because you get access to them here and through junior hockey, and you know this better than anyone, but through junior hockey to them and the people around them, and you're telling their story in many cases for the very first time instead of for the 5th or 6th time. So they're more eager to talk to you. Their families and billets are more excited about it.
Oh, yeah.
This is really their introduction to the masses in many ways. It's the best.
So the one other point that I do want to make here about this tournament and how sort of wide-eyed everybody is about it. I remember talking to Dave Cameron, who's the head coach of Team Canada, Ottawa 67s. This is about, like, honestly, Wheels, probably 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about junior hockey versus the NHL. And he said, "You really like junior hockey?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's always been one of my first loves. Like, I remember going to Maple Leaf Gardens with my dad to Marlboros games. You bought a ticket to the Leafs, you got a free ticket to the Marlboros. Afternoons at Maple Leaf Gardens at the Marlboros, evenings watching Maple Leaf game. It was great." And he said, and I said something along the lines of, "I don't even know why I'm so attracted to junior hockey, but I just am." And he said, "I'll tell you why you like junior hockey." It's 15 years ago, Dave Cameron. He said, "In the NHL, you'll watch a game and there will be about 5 mistakes that lead to a big moment.
Mhm.
In junior hockey, there's about 35. That's why you like junior hockey. It's high quality enough that it looks like a really well-played game, but these are still kids that are still going to make bonehead decisions, going to make awful decisions,
Yep.
and it's going to lead to big, exciting, dumb hockey moments. And it's a saying that's always stuck with me, and I've always said it. What kind of hockey do I like? I like dumb hockey. I want mistakes. I don't want to see everything perfect. Give me dumb hockey. I don't mean it as a pejorative. I mean it as a compliment.
Mm-hmm.
I like big, dumb hockey. That's why I like junior hockey.
And this isn't a World Junior moment, but 6 months ago, I was sitting just outside of Helsinki in a rink for U18 Worlds, watching Trevor Connolly deliver a check from behind when the game was over for the Americans in the gold medal game.
Yeah.
And then what happens? The door is open. You would even a Brad Marchand or a Tom Wilson, the pests of the NHL, would they deliver that hit at that moment in Game 7 of a Stanley Cup final? Absolutely not. But Trevor Connolly was trying to make a play. He was trying to finish his check hard. He was trying to get noticed. And then suddenly Canada has a 5-minute power play. Gavin McKenna says night to the Americans. TJ Ginla chips in. And those moments you cannot get elsewhere. And part of that is Trevor Connolly playing on that stage for the very first time and not being ready for it in the way that a seasoned NHL veteran is.
You're a busy guy. I appreciate you parking some time.
Thank you.
We'll see you at
Cheers, buddy.
We'll see you at Canadian Tire Center later on tonight for Canada-Latvia. Thanks. All the best. Continued success at The Athletic.
Thanks, man.
There he is. Scott Wheeler from The Athletic. Make sure to check out. They do a number of different podcasts there. They're always rotating. If you haven't listened to The Athletic Hockey Podcast before, always rotating hosts and co-hosts. And the ones that Wheels does with Corey Pronman, which focuses on prospects, and junior hockey is always outstanding. If you're a fan of it, I encourage you to check that out. Now, Craig Campbell is going to stop by here in a couple of moments. We'll just wrangle Craig and bring him aboard. On the business card, it says Manager, Resource Center, and Archives for the Hockey Hall of Fame. But really, Craig has, in a lot of ways, a dream job. It's his job to go and find hockey memorabilia and from all over the world. Sticks here, pucks there, sweaters here, programs there. Not just from North America, but all through Europe, all through Asia as well. I know that Phil Pritchard, the keeper of the cup, has the sexiest position at the Hockey Hall of Fame. Gets to get out there with the cup in the Stanley Cup final, has the white gloves on, has the commercials, but and that's a great gig. And think about how long we've seen Phil do that. A number of times we've seen Phil. We should probably get Craig on. We've seen him do that. But for my money, Craig Campbell may have the coolest gig in the world. I haven't been to the Resource Center a number of years, and I'm overdue. Like, as much as I love the Hockey Hall of Fame, and it's great. If you haven't been, the next time you're in Toronto, do yourself the favor. Everyone's heard my Hockey Hall of Fame story when I used to be at the X, and how I used to essentially live there with my notepad. But walking through the Resource Center and seeing all the artifacts and the uncatalogued videos and things that they have is awe-inspiring. It's fantastic. Craig Campbell joins me now. Craig, thanks so much for stopping by. Much appreciated.
My pleasure, Jeff.
First of all, I was just talking to Scott Wheeler about this. One of the things, and I didn't know how active the hall was on this, but actively, you're always in the process of talking to hockey fans, appealing to hockey fans for the one or two pieces or the one bit of memorabilia they may have stored in their basement or in their garage. If you could talk to that a little bit, and then are there any stories of big pieces of hockey memorabilia that you could recall I was just hanging out in someone's pool cabana that now has its rightful home in the Hockey Hall of Fame or at the Resource Center?
And there's a lot.
Yeah.
That just through circumstance, yourself.
Yeah.
You may connect me with somebody that
Scott Wheeler a second ago, yeah.
So, but also you mentioned Bill Waters.
Oh, Billy's got some great stuff.
Yeah. So
the McCock jersey looks great from '76.
And so it could be somebody that we know of. It could be.
Get the mic a little closer for you.
Oh, sorry. We were just visited by some people at the display here in the Aberdeen Pavilion, and the one guy, he was like a close buddy to Dennis Potvin. And so he just said, yeah, I've got my ticket stubs from, 67s.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, while not everybody's going to the Hall of Fame to see a ticket stub from the Ottawa 67s, we recognize, every team is part of the fabric, the jigsaw puzzle of the game. And if he happens to have a ticket stub from game one, well, that's of interest. But he also may have a ticket stub of a milestone point of his buddy Dennis Potvin. Or, and so that's how these things come by. Or we might meet a relative of someone who played for the Ottawa Hockey Club, the Silver Sub that used to skate in here, or perhaps the original Ottawa Senators, or I would love to meet someone, who has a relative who played with the Ottawa Alerts, for example. And I did meet a gentleman who said his aunt played. He might have a couple of original photos, but
oh, wow.
That's how it happens. And one of the beauties of our outreach program, which Isaac Westgate, dealt with Hockey Canada and the good people of Hockey Canada that brought us down here. If we get out into the community, we can meet these people. We're here for the fans.
Yeah.
We're here for the people that enjoy it for what it is, but we will meet people. And, the various places we've been all throughout North America or overseas, we'll meet those people that might have an item, an old program, a game-worn sweater, a milestone puck, who knows?
What do people get for donating to the Hockey Hall of Fame?
So the biggest thing that I will say to people is the biggest thing that you want to receive out of it is the satisfaction, knowledge, and special feeling that you've helped preserve a piece of hockey history.
Yeah.
Either from yourself, your family, your greater family. That's the biggest thing, because if that's what you want, then that's why the Hockey Hall of Fame or any sports museum or place of heritage would welcome that item or collection. If you're in Canada, you can receive a gift in kind tax receipt for an appraised value. So if somebody donates, as a photographer donates his photo collection or her photo collection or her game-worn sweater, or from a significant championship or whatnot, maybe they may wish a tax receipt for the appraised value. And it kind of works like an RSP, where I'll just use for an example, if it's $1,000, you may get once you put it through the Canadian revenue, it might come out to about a $300 benefit for you. And so that would satisfy our donors in Canada. But we do receive things from Hungary and Australia and obviously all throughout the United States.
People randomly reach out to you? Like, how do they get in touch with you to do this in the first place?
Mail. Remember mail?
Vaguely here in Canada.
Yeah, they got that going now. But we actually did a wonderful series with Canada Post, and it was a 5-part thing that identified all the trophies leading up to the NHL's 100th anniversary centennial.
Yeah.
And one of the features in one of the books talked about some of the unique things that we've received, and Herb Gardner's Calgary Tigers ring came from Pennsylvania by U.S. Post by way of Canada Post to us.
Oh, wow.
And we received, I mentioned to you earlier that we have Bill Hutton's, I didn't mention his name, but we have Philadelphia Quaker sweater. Yep. It came by Canada Post to us. Wow. And that's probably 25, maybe even 30 years ago. So it can come to us by conventional method like that, or we'll get an email or a phone call, and someone will reach out and say, hey, would you have any interest in item XYZ? And that's how it happens, or we meet somebody at an event like this.
Sure. I would imagine you might have some white whales, items that, if only we could find this. And I shared this video with you. I know 93 was very important for you personally.
Right.
The gloves, the white gloves, handing out the Stanley Cup.
While being involved with the formal presentation,
right?
Correct, yep.
And If I was in your position, my biggest white whale would be the puck from that final game in 1993, Game 5, Los Angeles Kings, Montreal Canadiens. As the video shows, Darryl Sudor grabs the puck from Kelly Rudy behind the Kings net. Clock is counting down, and Darryl Sudor fires the puck into the stands at the Forum. The puck is lost forever. But that puck exists somewhere. And I don't even know if the person who has it even knows that is that puck from 1993, the last time a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup. I wouldn't even know how to begin to try to hunt for it or look for it. It does have the makings of what could be a wonderful documentary. That would be my white whale. I remember I asked Darryl Sudor about it once, and he said, I haven't thought about that moment going back to 1993. There was nothing deliberate about it, like, oh, I'm throwing this puck away. No one's ever going to have this puck. He said, I was just frustrated that we weren't going to win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
Do you have a white whale like that? Like, I would love to know where that puck is. Is there something in the back of your mind, like, I wish we could find this?
And certainly there would be. And what we're doing right now may be the catalyst to find that puck.
Hope so.
Right? Because this may get seen by somebody who sees, or we contact Dave Stubbs, longtime Montreal media guy, and you know him, but
former WWF referee as well.
Oh, I did not know.
Oh, ask Stubbsy about his time with the WWF in Montreal, refereeing Hulk Hogan matches. Oh, yeah.
He never mentioned that. That's good. That's a good little nugget for me to file away.
Yeah, Stubbsy's good.
But he may know someone, or he may know a way to get that information. Like, we should try to find that puck.
Sure.
Why wouldn't we? And the puck may not have a goal on it. Right. It may be another one that went into play. I don't know how long that puck lasted in the game, but we should have it. It's a 100th anniversary. I don't recall, and I said to you, I was there. I don't recall trying to get the goal pucks that game. I was relatively new at the Hall, and there's one. I'll say a white whale. There's a bunch of them that we would have because.
Hang on, can I guess? Hamilton Tiger sweater.
So that would be a good one.
Yeah,
for sure. No, we came close. We received a Hamilton Tigers senior amateur sweater from the 1930s, and it is spectacular. It's beautiful. Really, the much like some of the sweaters here on display, the detail of the crest and the art of the sewing and the design and the color, the hue of the fabric. It's beautiful. Yes, we would like an NHL one. We're missing other NHL sweaters as well, but we're also missing, the Ottawa Alerts. Show me Ottawa.
Sure.
There's those that we're missing.
Yeah.
Teams that had either special players or had great success, and maybe we don't have anything. And it could be from a team in Canada. It could be a team from the United States. Or it could be, an early Russian team sweater.
Sure.
A club sweater. But there's many things that we are missing. We only have one program from the first year of the NHL. And, we use the NHL a lot as sort of a pinnacle, certainly for men's hockey. But we need more on the Preston Rivulets. We need more on, the women's team that Edmonton, that Preston would go out and play for the national championship and drive out there in a bus. And there's lots of amateur and professional leagues that we are missing key items that people might assume we have or hope we have. The original minute book of the International Ice Hockey Federation. We have the original for the Canadian Amateur Hockey Association. We have the original for the Beaches Hockey League, which has become now know as the Greater Toronto League, the biggest, arguably the biggest minor hockey association. But so there, the Montreal AAA. It'd be nice if we had did someone keep a sweater from 1893? And however, those things might be in landfill, but that's why places of heritage,
Sure,
Hockey Hall of Fame, or other halls of fame for various sports or other parts of walks of life, that's why we exist, so we can preserve what does exist.
right.
And
I want to ask about the exhibit here and the exhibits. But a question that comes in from Jessica L. Did they end up finding the Pat Kane puck from the Hawks win in Philadelphia? I think they did. That was a 2010 Stanley Cup final. The puck that was in dispute.
so I mean, Phil and I were there, and I remember because we're in the background.
Yeah.
And then it's like, we get signaled by someone from the NHL we wait for our cue to go. So we didn't actually see what transpired really.
Yeah.
Because we were kind of ready to go. And so I believe that puck was picked up by a linesman and made its way back to us.
So it did make its way back.
I believe so.
Okay. The displays here are really neat. I don't know why I'm so fascinated with Patrick Laine's skate mat for Team Finland, but I love that you have that out. Henrik Sedin nameplate from the dressing room as well. The World Juniors Casey Middlestat jersey, the football style jersey that USA wore that one time. I'm a sucker. Anytime you put the Whitby Dunlop's jersey out there and the Trail Smoke Eaters jersey out there, love that orange. I'm a sucker for it every time. So I was happy to see that when I came yesterday. Can you walk us through a couple of the items people can see here?
And so you touched on some nice ones. So Isaac Westgate pulled, at the archives. So the beauty of the museum is we have a wonderful museum today. The archives is rich, like any archive or art gallery or whatnot, where you have other items that will rotate on and off display.
Yep.
But one of the benefits of our outreach program is we can come to Ottawa and pull wonderful items from the archives. And so Isaac, was pulling those prior to coming here, and he came down and set it up with colleague Spencer Oakes, and they'll be here at the back end to be here and tear it down. And so we have a display on each of the countries represented here at the tournament. And so those items have either come from the federation or player.
Okay.
Or perhaps a fan, but most of these that are contemporary have likely come through the support of the IHF and the member federations that they represent. And we have great support from a variety of people for decades. Mm-hmm. And we also have something on women's hockey, on Indigenous hockey here. And then, just reflections back on, we have Dennis Popvan's alternate. You got the A there for the alternate captain from the red sweater from the Canada Cup. We have Bob Ewers.
76.
Yeah. And then we have Bob Ewers.
Where he said he was the best defenseman, not Bobby. Controversy, Dennis, controversy.
But a local guy. And
yes.
So Bob Ewers' sweater from 72, which unfortunately he couldn't wear in game action. But he was there. He was part of the team. Helmet from Connor Bedard, from a recent World Junior. We have some wonderful items, and we have some items here from players. Brian Jenner, who plays with the Ottawa Charge, and Brady Tkachuk, for example, plays with the Senators. So we brought some items, and this is how we can cater it. We're coming to Ottawa. What do we want to bring? What does Hockey Canada want us to bring? Obviously, we know what we're doing for the IHF, and so it's Isaac we'll put that together and pull the artifacts, and thankfully we have such a strong collection. Again, we can make this wonderful, and there's about 20 showcases, and yet we have a beautiful exhibit at the museum that also covers the World Junior Championship and women's hockey and whatnot.
So I'm glad you mentioned that Bobby Orr jersey from 72.
Yeah.
So one of the great, you probably know this, but for our listeners and viewers, one of the great stories around Bobby Orr not playing in 72, after the game in Montreal, the game that shocked everybody, with the Soviets winning. Canada goes up 2-0. They're all laughing on the bench. Phil Esposito's leading the laughter. Next thing you know, it's taking a drink out of a fire hose as Soviets are pounding Canada, and end up winning that game. And Team Canada freaks out. Bobby, we need you. Is there any way you can play? Game 2 is at Maple Leaf Gardens. Bobby says he'll try it out, and he'll try the knee out in practice and see if he can go. And the goaltender they brought in to take shots on Bobby Orr was a third-string goaltender from the Toronto Marlboros junior team. That goalie, his name is Greg Keeler, who music fans in Canada will know as one of the singer-songwriters, guitarists from the band Blue Rodeo. Sure you know that story, but is one that is just sort of legendary. Whenever I think of Bobby Orr in 72, I think of Blue Rodeo and Greg Keeler and that story of what could have been for Greg Keeler and what would that meant for the Canadian music scene. Do you ever get, I'm sure you must, weird things, weird hockey artifacts? You know, I put a sort of question out to the Twitter X sphere, like, you know, what sort of memorabilia would you be interested in? And doing a quick Google search as well, people say, well, what about Bobby Clarke's teeth?
Right.
Would you ever get something like that submitted to the Hall of Fame?
So we have a knee brace, Bobby Orr, crutches Bobby Orr. Yeah. I recall some dentures from a player, but I don't know if we got them. But I think it had something to do with Dave Keon. But I'm not sure where we have them or someone mentioned it. And so forgive me for not. But you mentioned Bobby Clarke, and we'll jump back a bit.
Okay.
His mom sent us a little letter on letterhead. Would you be interested in Bobby's? We have scrapbooks on Bobby Clarke. We have his Flin Flon,
the Bombers
sweaters, both home and away. His blazers with the Flin Flon logo, his juvenile jacket, his rink rat jacket, and it came to us in little letters, so we kept those letters.
Yeah. And
we subsequently have the 22 scrapbooks or so and the full uniform, and we've showcased and displayed Bobby Clarke's Flin Flon story through those artifacts, and that's the beauty. When we have an item that people can see, a tangible item, it kind of gives life to that part of a player's career or a team. But unfortunately, there are some players or teams we just unfortunately don't have anything for, including some of our honored members, and we may never receive anything because it's long gone. But, we hope that maybe someone will come out and go, geez, we have something from Dan Bain or Mike Grant or Eva Alt of the Ottawa Alerts.
Let me close on this one. It's a great story that Ray Scampanello told me. Legendary NHL linesman, one of the finest to ever do it. The Scampanello family is from Guelph, Ontario. And what Scampy would do is he would collect players' sticks. He had like autographed Gretzky and Marcel Dion, like all the era obviously that he worked. Phil Esposito, Ken Dryden, Mario Lemieux, like all like superstar players. And at the end of every season, he would take him to his parents' house in Guelph, Ontario, and leave him in the garage. At the end of his career, he goes back to his parents' house and he asks his mom, like, Mom, where are all the sticks? And his mom says, oh, they're in the back. He goes back to the garage. He goes, no, they're not here. They're not here. And she's like, sure they are. They're over there in the garden. Mom had cut thousands of dollars worth of probably Hall of Fame destined sticks in half for the tomatoes. That may be the most expensive tomatoes ever grown in Ontario. How many times do you hear stories like that? Maybe not exactly like that, but, I had this autographed hockey stick of Wayne Gretzky, but Mom cut it for the garden.
Very practical use.
Yes.
But, yes, I've contacted some older photographers and or made touch with them, and the family has thrown out the negatives or the slides. That has happened before.
Oh, yeah.
But on your note of a tomato steak, one of the more famous tomato steaks that probably doesn't exist anymore. I'm sure the wood's long gone, but a good friend of mine now, Rory Montgomery, worked for the NHL Players Association. In the late 90s, he was working on a project, and he would constantly come into the Hall of Fame and access our fabulous resource of our photo archive for the project he was working on. And so I said, you got to ask Steve Larmer where his stick is. He scored the game winner in the 91 Canada Cup.
Oh, wow.
And so I never actually met Steve Larmer, but Rory asked him when he was back at, the PA office and was told that cut it up and it's a tomato steak in the backyard. And so that's the last Canada Cup goal. And so, as much as we try to educate people, let's preserve history. And lots of people understand that. And so through various teams and leagues, and whether people move on to a different league or whatnot, hopefully we get that support. And we've had wonderful support through a variety of donors over the years, decades. Yeah. Because everything's donated to the Hall of Fame. We're a charity. We're not funded by government. We're not funded directly by any league or government. So we rely on it's the generosity of people that have allowed us to have the wonderful collection that we have here in Ottawa or at, back home in Toronto at the Hockey Hall of Fame.
They want to be pieces of the puzzle.
Correct.
How can people get in touch with you if they have something knocking around the basement or in the garage they think may be of interest for the Hockey Hall of Fame? How do they reach out?
So thank you. We have acquisitions at hhof.com. That's our generic one. But otherwise, I'm Campbell C, CAMPBELLC at hhof.com. And, number 416-933-8224 is the office number.
Awesome.
And literally, that's how people get in touch with us, myself or colleagues, Phil Pritchard or Isaac or Mira or whomever. And it's wonderful that people do and continue to do so, and likely will continue to do so here in Ottawa.
I love it. You're a wonderful person and important to hockey history
Jeff
yourself.
Mark, thank you so kindly for having me on.
I got to see you at the Resource Center. I'm overdue.
Okay.
I'm overdue for another tour. Thanks,
Read
Craig.
it. Yes.
Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Craig Campbell, the business card reads like this: Manager, Resource Center, and Archives. But really, he's the guy that has one of the coolest hockey jobs in the world, hands down. I love that Ray Scampanello story, by the way. Having all those thousands of dollars of hockey sticks and autographed growing tomatoes. I love it. But want to bring aboard the family that I talked about at the outset of today's program. These are the Weaves. Chris, Larissa, and son Max. They are in the proud tradition of Canadian hockey billet families. The former billet family for Vladimir Nikitin, netminder for Kazakhstan. First of all, thanks so much. Who's going to be doing the talking here?
I've been
okay,
elected.
Larissa, you've been elected to talk. All right. So, when Vlad, I first saw you because everyone here has the Keaton jerseys. You got the BCHL and the Kazakhstan. That is such a gorgeous jersey. Those legit puck marks.
Oh yes,
game worn legit puck marks on them.
Game worn. This is the jersey he was wearing when he scored his goalie goal.
Oh, that's right.
This is it.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Was that a gift or was that a loan?
No, it was a gift of sorts.
Okay.
I actually bought the jerseys, and then I said I had both of them, and I said, which one do you want to take home to your dad? And so he chose that we got this one.
Okay.
And he took the dark one home for his dad.
Starting netminder for Kazakhstan, Ottawa Senators draft pick. No pressure, right? Tell us about Vladimir as when he billeted with you.
He's a very hardworking, respectful, appreciative young man.
Let's bring the mic a little closer. Yep.
He's very hardworking and appreciative, and he fit in our family beautifully. He came in with a little bit of English, but a lot more than we had of Russian. So, and he's very hardworking. So he definitely did a great job of improving his English and just throwing himself into Canadian family life.
Do you always billet goaltenders?
No.
Or was he your first goalie?
He was our first. We've actually done this for 11 seasons. We've had probably an even split of defensemen and forwards, and he was our first goalie.
What is he like? I mean, he's going to face 70 shots a night at this tournament.
Yeah.
What's he like? How is he going to handle this?
He's very focused. He tries to just keep centered on the job at hand.
Yep.
He works quite well under pressure, but then he will definitely replay it all. He will be thinking through it all afterwards. Yeah, absolutely. He takes it very seriously. He understands what's at stake here, and it's a big deal.
Walk us through what it was like to billet him. What would a normal day be, or are there no normal days?
There's no normal days. When he first arrived, we spent a lot of time using Google Translate and just figuring out, what his preferences were, what a day looked like, and just kind of figuring things out together. They're very close in age. Our son and Vladimir are just months apart, so they actually developed a great friendship, and that was good for downtime away from the rink. They had a lot of, they watch movies and play basketball and the occasional video game, so that was nice downtime as well, away from hockey.
Max, you want to grab the mic for a second?
Sure.
Okay, so that's Mom's point of view.
Yeah.
Okay, Mom, close your ears now. All right, what's he like as a dude?
He's a really good person. He's always caring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what does he like to do? Like, what would you guys do together? Mom mentioned you guys are similar in age.
Yeah, we watched a lot of movies.
Yeah.
Played a lot of NHL video games.
Oh,
a little bit of FIFA. We went axe throwing one time, went to an arcade.
Nice.
Played a lot of basketball as well.
How is he at axe throwing?
Pretty good, actually. He's not bad.
Yeah. Gets that from the old country?
Possibly.
All right, pass it over to Dad for a second. All right, welcoming a goaltender into the family as a billet dad. What was it like?
Well, I thought it was going to be strange because, goalies can be flaky, but he's not a flake. I'll never forget what he said. It's hockey, easy game. You shoot, you score, you win. So very down to earth, very appreciative of what we had to offer him.
Yeah.
And just a great kid.
Yeah.
It's been so much fun to keep in contact with all our billets, but Vladdy is he's special. He's a very special kid.
Still very much keep in touch with Vladimir?
Yes, as much as we possibly can, yeah.
Right.
With all our billets, to be honest. We try to keep in contact, but especially Vladdy, he's a top kid in our hearts.
Like, I really hope this turns into, because there's always, the underdog story at every World Junior, and everyone gravitates towards one player who just becomes a star seemingly out of nowhere. This is going to be a tough tournament for Kazakhstan. But I really do get the feeling, since he's the only Ottawa Senators prospect in this tournament, that every time Kazakhstan plays, the home crowd here, Ottawa hockey fans, are going to be behind him. Agree or disagree?
I agree. I think, based on character alone, if the team is built like Vladdy, you're getting a winner. Like, he is such a good kid in the room, a good kid with his teammates, and just deeply cares about people, besides the game. But, yeah, like you cannot not cheer for him.
Yeah. Great kid. Who's his favorite goaltender? Do we know? Does he have a favorite goalie? Max, who's his favorite goalie?
Bay, wasn't it?
Oh, Bobrovsky. Sergei Bobrovsky.
Oh, he likes Bobrovsky on Florida? Yeah, he's pretty good.
Yeah,
it's not too bad. Listen, I know you have a busy day of worrying about a goaltender ahead of you. Who's going to be more nervous, him or you guys?
Mom.
Me.
Yeah, Mom. Okay. We'll let you get back to your hand ring. Thanks so
you.
much for stopping by. Max, a pleasure. Chris, best of luck. Enjoy this tournament. Best of Vladdy. All right, Billet families making the hockey world go round. Thank you very much. That is Chris, Max, and Larissa Wiebe. Billet family for Vladimir Nikitin when he played in the BCHL. I love it. Like, I'm just a sucker for this. Like, I love today's show. Thanks to everyone who participated in the chat as well. A couple of things still to get to before we wrap it up here from FanFest. The NHL is back tonight. The PWHL is back as well. Toronto faces off against Boston at Coca-Cola Coliseum. The NHL is back, making headlines today around the NHL. The Colorado Avalanche are signing Mackenzie Blackwood to a 5-year contract extension. 5.3 is the AAV there. And I've always said this about teams, and this is not a slight at Mackenzie Blackwood, but they don't need Sergei Bobrovsky to win the Stanley Cup. Some teams do. I always consider that elite level net mining to be a luxury item. Teams like the Rangers have it. Teams like Florida have it. Teams like Tampa Bay have it. But Colorado has demonstrated that they don't need that elite level guy. They just need someone to make basic saves, and they have that with Mackenzie Blackwood. So 8 games on the go around the NHL. Oh, by the way, speaking of net minding, tonight Boston and Columbus are Korpisalo against Bruce Lickens, a former tandem in Columbus themselves. Markstrom versus Kochetkov for the Carolina, New Jersey game. Todd McClellan makes his debut behind the bench for the Detroit Red Wings tonight. It'll be Joseph Woll versus Cam Talbot in net. Edvinsson and Sherratt are expected to play for the Detroit Red Wings. New coach, they have a heavy lift here if they're going to pull themselves out of Buffalo Sabres land. Speaking of the Sabres and their 1-game win streak, thank you very much, in action against the Chicago Blackhawks. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen facing off against Peter Mrazek. It'll be Nashville, who really didn't want this break at all. They're playing some good hockey. They'll face off against the St. Louis Blues. Minnesota and Dallas, no Kaprizov. He didn't make the flight to Dallas. Lower body injury there. 2 teams that we expect to be making moves come trade deadline time. And it is the return of Tomas Hertl, as the Vegas Golden Knights were in San Jose for the first time since the Hertl trade going back last spring. So the NHL is back. The PWHL is back. And tonight at the World Juniors, what do we have here? Tonight we have Sweden facing off against Kazakhstan. Go Vladimir Nikitin, Ottawa Senators draft pick. Latvia faces off against Canada. Jack Ivankovic will get the start for Canada. That is Stephen Ellis's favorite goaltender here at the tournaments. So he will be insufferable tonight in Popcorn Row, I assure you. Thanks for joining me today. That's a wrap from FanFest here. Want to thank all of our guests, Craig Campbell from the Hockey Hall of Fame, Scott Wheeler from The Athletic, and just calling the audible on the Weeb family. Just chatted with them a couple of minutes and said, why don't you come on and talk about Vladimir? Thanks to them for stopping by. Zach, we fooled them again. We did it. We fooled them again for an hour. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Thanks to everyone who helped put this show together. Everybody back home and everyone here on site in Ottawa, thank you. Thank you. We are back on Monday, 3 o'clock Eastern, with another edition of The Sheets. We're here Monday and Tuesday, and then back January 1st for regular shows in the broadcast empire that is my basement. Thanks for joining me today. Wrapping up The Sheet for another week. We're back on Monday. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your hockey, NHL, PWHL, juniors, or otherwise. Maybe it's your kids playing. It's tournament season, folks. Enjoy it. We'll talk to you again on Monday. If you enjoyed that video, and we certainly hope that you do, please hit the subscribe button right there here at Daily Faceoff. I will put this lineup up against any hockey lineup anywhere. It all gets underway at 9 o'clock Eastern with Morning Cup of Hockey. That is Johnny Lazarus. That is Colby Cohen. Then at noon, it's DFO Live. And then 3 o'clock Eastern, The Sheet. Get caught up on everything in hockey.